Hi, I'm Ben. Welcome to my book corner, and we kick off August with The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This came out in June of 2023 and the hardback comes in at a very respectable 385 pages, and this is a mystery thriller. As always, we shall take a look at the story, the characters, the world building. We'll touch on the presentation before I give my final thoughts at the end. So let's just throw ourselves straight into this one. Throughout the story of this one, we follow Kit. Kit has just returned from his 6-month suspension after being accused of aiding in the suicide of a patient. And she's given a new assignment, one that nobody else wants, and that is to go to Hope's End and look after a stroke victim there, one Lenora Hope, who was believed but never convicted of murdering her father, mother and sister just over 50 years before this story takes place. And the story takes place mainly within the confines of the house as she becomes the carer to the character of Lenora. And she meets multiple other characters throughout the course of the story. You've got the head housekeeper and the cook, who were both employed by the Hope family at the time of the murders. And she is trying to kind of find out what really happened, because much like her, Lenora was assumed guilty by everybody else but never actually convicted. And whilst Lenora at least appears to be largely immobile and unable to communicate, there's a typewriter in the room, and she suggests that she's willing to share her story with Kit over the course of the book. As the book progresses, it's eventually realised that what's going on, and there's a lot of twists and turns in here, and I can't really touch much on that. What I would say is, if you're one of those weird people like me, who when you pick up a book in a shop, you read a page from the front, a page from the middle and a page from the back to see if you'll like the writing style, don't do that with this, because if you go to the back page, the spoiler for the biggest twist in this book is there. But this is largely an uncovering of the mystery of what really happened that night, because what people assumed and what people were accused of and what actually happened obviously don't all mix up. And there's some interesting sort of side touches that sort of lean in, and there's plenty of red herrings in here as well. It is a compelling story in of itself, the slow sort of peeling away of layers of the onion, as it were, and as a mystery goes, it is actually quite an interesting one to work with. So on to the characters then, and you have two primary characters in this. The character of Kit, who you follow the story from their point of view, and obviously the lady she's caring for, named at the beginning of the story as Lenora Hope herself. And obviously there is a limit on how much characterization you can give to Lenora, largely due to the fact she is highly immobile, she can't talk. So there's some interesting little touches that show intelligence or grief or regret, but she's also described by other characters as being incredibly deceitful and manipulative, and that does come across in interesting ways and not how you would expect. Kit, on the other hand, despite being the main character of this, does not really get that much in terms of characterization, which sounds a bit disingenuous to say when I say it out loud. But what I mean by that is she doesn't really change over the course of the story. She is somebody who's looking for almost a kindred spirit in many regards. Somebody who has been falsely accused of something, but people, even after being found innocent, people still don't believe her and believe that she was guilty of this. And there was some interesting peeling back on her backstory, which in terms of what actually happened that night when her patient died, that's quite interestingly done as well. The biggest thing that she has going all the way through is that she is relentlessly asking questions. She's incredibly inquisitive. She's also quite distrustful, and some of the actions that she takes in here actually makes her quite dislikable at times as a main protagonist. The other characters within the story don't fare so well, but that is largely because they have very little page time. So in many regards, the characters in this almost feel like a collection of the characters from Cluedo. You get a few one-note points on them all, just enough for them to further the plot and give them just enough interest that when twists happen involving them, and there are twists for pretty much every character in this, just on a side point, there's enough interest generated by what we discover about the characters beforehand to make them stick. But they're not really in the book enough to get any great deal of character development. There are a couple of exceptions to this. I can't really go into it without spoiling the actual story, so I'm going to leave it there. So characterization in this is uneven at best, and I would have liked to have seen a lot more from Kit in particular, especially when she is interacting with the other characters, because, as I say, a lot of the time all those interactions were, although not to this blunt level, what it was you what done it, I know you done it, tell me how you did it, sort of line of questioning rather than any genuine socializing going on. The world building for this is actually pretty good, especially when you're looking back at 1929 when the murders happened, as it builds up about the great stock market crash and the beginning of the Great Depression, which is why a lot of the murders were not actually really noticed beyond the local area of Boston where this is based. So you get the sense of how ostentatious that this house was that was built just to show off the money that the Hope family had acquired. And on top of that, you get some good characterization for how the actual family, as a rule of thumb due to their wealth, were almost above the law in a lot of things that they could do. And you also have sort of little side points as well. The fact that this is still seen as sort of a taboo place in the local community because of what happened. There's nursery rhymes in the schoolyard talking about how Lenora Hope killed her family. There's graffiti on the walls. It's very much a place where you don't go, and nobody's seen Lenora in years. Now this is, of course, due to the fact that she's had the stroke, so she can't realistically go outside, but she's kept inside to keep her away from prying eyes, which adds to the mystique of everything. Other than that, this does feel like a relatively normal modern day setting. This is set in 1983. So there's no mobile phones, but you do have the little snippets of the older technology in there, like your Walkmans to play stories that have been recorded and stuff like that. And also, the house itself almost has its own personality, due to the fact it's built pretty much on the edge of a cliff, and as we all know, cliffs erode and collapse over time. This is a house, much like the inhabitants in it that are on their last legs, it is slowly but surely falling into the sea. And that is something that does add to something in the last third of the book. It's actually touched on the fact how the higher in the house you go, the more the house kind of seems to slope. So you're waking up, Kit's waking up in the morning and she slid down the bed a little bit in the night. And she actually finds it difficult to walk initially because it's just slightly off kilter enough to throw her. And that's really well done. In terms of presentation, there's a couple of things to touch on here. The first thing is that quite a few of the chapters here are prefaced with some typing that's been done by Lenora, sometimes to Kit and sometimes to the maid that unfortunately disappeared before Kit started. And it's not always clear who she's written those ones for, whether it's ones that have been written, or typed I should say, with Kit or with the previous maid. And that helps give you a little bit of understanding for where the twist might go, or misdirects the twist in some cases as well. What I will say is there are a lot of twists in this title, and for me personally, there's probably a few too many twists and turns in here, which kind of cheapens the major twists when they occur. But on that being said, none of them come out of nothing. There's a few that I guessed, there's a few that I didn't, but every one does have setup that you can look back and go, oh, it came from there. On the major twist, I sort of kicked myself because I didn't actually guess what it was, and I probably should have done. but everything was well set up throughout this, and it really does do a good job of giving you the sort of look at multiple different layers of mystery and suspense that's in here. This is the first true mystery book that I've read in a long time, and it was pretty solidly done. Now, my biggest criticism of this is the fact that there are so many twists. Every character pretty much has a twist involved with the main story, and to me that feels a little bit excessive and a little bit distracting, if I'm completely honest, and in some ways does actually cheapen the end of the book with the major reveals that happen there. Now, on that being said, none of them are done badly, and they are all well foreshadowed previously in the text, so when they do happen, you don't sit there and go, huh, didn't see that one coming, because realistically, when you look back, you can actually see how the seeds have been very, very carefully planted. I like the way that they use the typewriter as a form of communication. I like the fact that Kit actually in many regards comes across as a unreliable narrator as well, as does Lenora in terms of what she's typing, because at no point do you trust the point of view of Kit or what you're being told as a reader, so that's really good as well. However, again, as I've mentioned, I feel this was a bit too twisty for its own good at times, and also Kit came across as more plot device than a character for me personally as well. So for that reason, as you know, I put things on a tier list rather than a 5-star system, and this goes solidly into top of B tier. I think if you like mysteries, you'll really enjoy this. If mystery isn't your first sort of choice of read, I think you'll still like this. I think you might find some frustrations there. But that's my thoughts on this. I'd love to know what yours are, or any other of Riley Sager's books as well. Let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you next time.